Hey guys, Steve the Audio Guy here. Thanks for coming back to my channel, and as always, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss a video. Today we're going to talk to Beau Alexander, Green Day's monitor engineer and account representative for 8th Day Sound in Cleveland, Ohio. Back in 2005, Beau and I toured together on Green Day's American Idiot Tour, and Beau has been working with the band ever since. Aside from his work with Green Day, Beau has also had the privilege of working with the band Tool as their monitor engineer and has traveled around the world on some of the biggest tours. I hope you all enjoy this discussion with Beau. Yeah, we'll get right into it, man. So, how did you get into live sound?
How did I get into live sound? Well, just like a lot of us that are in the industry, when I was in high school, actually, a bunch of buddies and myself decided to start a band. And, once we played, it was fun and all that good stuff. And then we quickly realized that, the band itself, we were playing some decent shows, but to get into the next level and go to the next level probably really wasn't going to happen. So we went in to record one time into a small studio here locally. And when I went into the recording studio, started kind of setting everything up and looking around and noticed this big old thing sitting over here in the corner with a bunch of knobs on it. And, the engineer was sitting there in front of it, twiddling away and doing all kinds of fun stuff. And I was like, huh. And a light bulb kind of went off and was like, well, maybe I should start looking into what this is. Maybe there's a little bit more of a future with this instead of, playing music. And that's kind of where it all began. And then once I started, looking into that, and then of course, just like a lot of other people, Full Sail came about, and which is out of Winter Park, Florida. And so I researched that and ended up down there. Excuse me. Ended up down there in 2000. What was it? In 2000, actually. And back then, it was a year program for the recording side of things.
Oh yeah.
And so I went and did the year program for recording, and while I was there, saw the different aspects, because you do take live production while you're there as well, and realized that live production seemed a little bit more interesting than the recording side of it. And although the recording side of it was a lot of fun because you learned a little bit more about audio itself, I started researching the live side of it, and then realized that live side's probably what would be more appealing. And then it kind of went from there, and ended up with an interview with, at the time it was called Claire Brothers. Now it's Claire Global. And ended up in an interview with them, and then 6 months later I was on the road, after doing an internship and that sort of thing. And then just kind of all taken off from there. And that was 21 years ago. So
who is the first band you toured with?
Oh man. The very first band I toured with was, funny enough, was Pantera.
Nice.
As a matter of fact. Yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
I got thrown right into the fire with that one.
Nice. That's killer.
It was awesome. Not to mention I was a fan of the band anyway. So, my first tour, being on the road, met some amazing people, which I still keep up with today. And being thrown in the fire with them right out of the gate plus it was a 5-band tour at the time too. And you just worked your ass off the whole time.
Yeah.
And it was a ton of fun. To be your first tour, it was like, wow, huge eye-opening experience. And it just kind of went from there. But it taught me a lot, being that it was a 5-band tour, it showed me it wasn't just about audio. It was about actually working your ass off and make sure you were on top of it. So
yeah, that's a heavy day.
It was a big day, but it was a lot of fun. It was a good learning experience. That's for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, my first tour was an Insane Clown Posse, Beau. So we're
we're in the same boat, right?
Yeah. Oh man. So
I do remember a first tour, or at least a second tour of yours.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, we're gonna get into that. We're gonna talk about that. So right now you work for 8th Day, right? As an account rep. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. Global sales for 8th Day Sound, and which is now under the same umbrella as Claire Global.
Nice.
And, we're able to use all the resources. It's not, yes, it's still branded as 8th Day Sound, but it's a company as a whole. It's 8th Day Sound, Claire Global, Brit Row, now Intech as well. And so It's really good. It's been a great experience. Obviously, 8th Day was great when I went there in 17, and then the move over to Claire and under the same big umbrella has actually been really welcoming, and everybody's been with open arms, and
Yeah.
having all the resources around the world now just makes everything so much more better.
Oh
So,
yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, part of your time at Claire, right, was the second tour was the Green Day experience. You are now
mhm.
a bona fide monitor engineer for Green Day and have been for quite some time, to my understanding. So, talk to me about how that whole thing occurred. I mean, I know a little bit, but let's hear from you. You know, what happened? How did you go from, guy in the shop to touring with Pantera and a Claire employee to all of a sudden you're Green Day's guy, right? Mixing for the band.
Yeah,
How'd that happen?
it was pretty crazy. I mean, like I said, I started touring in '01, and went from Pantera, then went to Godsmack, Puddle of Mud, Deftones tour, and then I think I went to Tool for a little bit, and the Kid Rock, then went into Rush, Linkin Park was in
Yeah.
there somewhere as well. And then when I was on Linkin Park, I met a fellow by the name of Brent Carpenter, who was mixing monitors for Linkin Park, and
Yep.
then he was going to Rush after we left Linkin Park. And so he was fortunate enough to carry me along with him, if you will. And so went to Rush, and then we did 6 months of that and learned a lot from the monitor side of things from him.
Mm-hmm.
And then after Rush was done, the rigger that was out on Rush, Brian Collins, was talking about Green Day. He was going to Green Day next, which was, right when American Idiot was the end of '04 and right when American Idiot came out.
Yeah.
And so fortunately, I got wrapped up into that one. And at the end of '04, I went out as like a PA/monitor tech on that. And we did the run at the end of '04 together. It was arena run right at the beginning of American Idiot, right when that whole record took off.
Yeah.
And then beginning of '05, we were firing back up to go back out on the road. And the monitor engineer that was out there, Ian Beveridge, who now has been with Foo Fighters forever, he worked for Dave Grohl prior to Green Day, and now
Mm-hmm.
he continues on. But anyways, he decided to go back to Foo Fighters or with Dave Grohl, and there was a hole in the monitor position. Well, at the time, Green Day, like I said, it was beginning of American Idiot. They had a lot of work ahead of them. And I was mixing some of the opening acts that was out on the previous tour.
Mm-hmm.
And, they were sitting there kind of wondering who they were going to fill a slot with. And they knew that I could mix it. Fortunately, they liked me. And they, asked me to do it. They didn't need the big resume, because obviously at the time I didn't have the big resume.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, they just wanted somebody that could fit in and do the job. So Ian was kind enough to let me take over his show file and kind of begin from there. And, at the beginning of '05, I took that position over, and, I've been mixing them ever since.
That's cool.
Since 2005. I mean, there's been some breaks,
Yeah.
I took a little bit of break from the road and later, and, 10 years later or something like that. But, and now, obviously I'm back doing it now again. So,
Yeah.
but that's kind of how it all began. I mean, I was very fortunate, just, kind of right place, right time, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, a lot of good people there that apparently wanted me around. So
Yeah, no, that's great. It's always nice. It's always nice when you can form that relationship and, become part of the camp as opposed to just, well, he's on it for this leg or something like that. That's
right. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
a whole different dynamic. And I want to talk about that, but so what does the team look like right now? Like, compared to 2005 American Idiot, how has the team expanded, shrunk, or how many people have stuck around? Like, what is that like being with a camp that long? Because I think there's a lot of people that jump from tour to tour, right? But like being with that successful band, being with that large camp for so long, I mean, that's got to be a different dynamic than say, you know, I'm mixing this band this year, and the next year I'm mixing that band, and maybe I'll go back to that. And, you know, a lot of guys are jumping around because they need work, right? But this is a different animal, right? This is big stuff, you know, hella mega tour, big stadiums. What's that like, being in that role?
Well, I mean, as you know, and a lot of people probably listen don't necessarily, but I mean, you know, depending on the venues and depending on how big the scale is as far as crew goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most bands will have some sort of a kind of a core crew, if you will. You know, when you go out on a record cycle, obviously you're, you know, usually, well, the way it used to be, it's kind of choppy right now, but the way it used to be is bands would go out with record cycle, you know, year to 2 years at a time, and then take some time off, write a new record, come back out for another whatever. So you were able to kind of, as a core crew, you kind of stick around and you do that whole record cycle, and then if you're fortunate enough, maybe they retain you on your off time, and then you're able to come back, you know, for the next record cycle. Um, you know, for me, the way it worked in that camp was, you know, I was able to, they were busy. I mean, obviously American Idiot, then it went right into another record, right into another record, you know, so that we were busy, I mean, solid till like 2012. And so it just kind of rolled in, but any gaps in there, you know, I'd started working for Tool as well in there too.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the gaps were able to be filled by what Tool was doing at the time. So a lot of, I mean, I've spent many years just kind of going back and forth between the two camps.
Yeah.
You know, as far as scaling goes on a band side of it, you know, nothing, I mean, to be honest, it's not changed a whole lot. You know, I mean, it's from say 2005 till now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've got their core people. They've, you know, Kevin Lemoyne is the front of house engineer for Green Day and has been since I believe it's 99 or 2000.
Yeah.
And then myself and Hans is the Billy Joe's guitar tech. Hans came in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're kind of, me and him are kind of in the same boat and have been doing it pretty much ever since. But, you know, we've had some other techs and things like that as far as the backline guys go. They've kind of, some people have switched out, some people have left the road and just altogether. And, you know, we've had to do that kind of thing. But as far as the positions go and stuff like that, I mean, yes, when you go into stadiums, obviously, as you know, there's a lot more people that need to be involved.
Yeah.
But from the core group kind of things, it's, you know, it's kind of the same.
Yeah.
You know, there's, you know, now in this day and age, you know, they're with the COVID thing and all that sort of stuff, you know, you kind of have to add a few more people because number one, you got COVID compliance officers. Number two, you've got, you know, for a band side of things, you'll want to carry, you know, some sort of a like a caterer or a chef or something like that, just to kind of keep the band isolated, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
so they don't have to be associated with more people than they need to be, just to make sure we're doing shows, you know, and kind of keep them safe from any kind of cancellation, stuff like that, just from being around other people. You know, it's little things like that, little nuances, if you will. But as far as the core group goes, it's kind of all, you know, yeah, we've, like I said, we've had a couple of people change in and out, but it's kind of all remained the same. I mean, it's, you know, they're, you know, yes, they are a punk rock band. That's where they came from. And they've kind of still got that same mentality, you know, nice and tight and, you know, full
But with
steam ahead kind of
but
thing.
with a lot of polish on it now. I mean,
Yes.
No,
Yes.
it's awesome. I got to be honest. I've, as you know, I've done a lot of shows too, and man, that tour back in 2005 and watching those guys every night, that was probably the best. I mean, those guys put on an incredible show all the time. So it's,
And, you know, to be honest with you, they still to this day, I mean, you know, yes, we're all a little bit older, but I mean, you know, as soon as they get on that stage, man, they're kicking ass, and, you know, and Billy still is able, you know, to control the crowd and keep the crowd in the palm of his hand. And, you know, it's still a lot of fun to be a part of.
Oh,
know?
yeah.
And that's
it's crazy.
And that was part of, you know, when I went back to mixing them, you know, in 01 or 21, and that was part of it. You know, it was like getting back on the stage with those guys, man. The energy is just huge.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun to be on stage with those guys.
That's killer. That's killer. So, you know, what's it like? I don't know. I mean, we've all had the the experience of when we were starting out, we were mixing in bars. You know, I still go do little bar gigs from time to time, but like, what's it like being with such a huge camp? Like, you know, I'm sure you guys ran the gamut when that American Idiot album came out. I know you guys were doing radio shows, which are, you know, sometimes smaller, maybe even acoustic stuff, to all of a sudden, you know, this day and age doing huge stadiums. What's that like as an engineer, going from, you know, that dynamic range of venues? Do you still get the jitters? Like, what, just explain like what goes through your head like before a show starts, you know, in a small venue versus, you know, 80,000 people. Like what's that like?
You know, it's a tough one. I mean, there's not a venue that I don't like playing, if you will. Obviously,
Yep.
there's venues that sound like crap that, you know, we've all been in, right?
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that kind of makes it a drag, really. I mean, yes, you got to kind of, you know, shoehorn things into places versus if you're on a stadium stage. I mean, as you know, those stages are huge, they're massive.
Yep.
You know, the downstage edge is 300 feet across, and,
Yeah.
you know, the stage itself is, you know, 80 feet across, and you got plenty of room. You got room for days to do whatever you need to do. Obviously, that's the comfort, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's, you know, you're able to just roll your stuff on stage, plug it in and go, and you're not worried about, you know, the bar they're setting up next to you right there where people are going to be spilling their drinks and all kinds of other shit, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, it depends. I mean, the wildest ride, I have to say, and tell the story a lot, was, you know, the American Idiot ride with these guys. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, in '04, you know, and this isn't talking junk or anything, but in '04, you know, when we got into the arenas, we were doing 7,000 seat arenas and not even coming close to selling half the arena,
Yeah.
you know. And then after '04,
Oh
and then
man.
just right at the beginning of '05, when that record just got traction, I mean, just unbelievable traction. It was nuts. I mean, it was such a ride. It was jumping on a rocket ship and holding on for dear life. It really
Yeah.
was. And,
That's cool.
you know, we were, like I said, we were playing arenas at, you know, small arenas, C market arenas, because that's the only thing that they would get into. And then all of a sudden, by the end of '05, I mean, literally we're playing stadiums.
Yeah. Yeah.
Within a matter of a year, you're going from selling 2,500 seats in a 7,000 seater to selling out giant stadium, you know. And it's the difference, you know, the show wise. I mean, the energy was just around the band in general was
Yeah.
huge, just because of what was going on. You know, and being a part of that ride was, like I said, I was kind of holding on for dear life. You know, me coming in, I mean, it was the first big band that, you know, I'd started mixing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm trying to keep my head wrapped around what's going on there and trying to make sure I'm still in my, you know, still in the right place at the right time and doing what I need to do to make sure the band's happy. And
Yeah.
yet they're, you know, on the biggest ride of their life too. So it was, you know, it was crazy. It really was. It was nuts. And it was a ton of fun. You know, all the shows were amazing. I mean, we were doing commercials and small theaters, you know, like literally commercials, like we'd film something for Yahoo or something like that, which is
That's
Yahoo
crazy.
still a thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we were filming, you know, we go in and film a small, you know, commercial in Oakland, California, you know, a theater. And then literally that night we'd go across the street and play just small club because the band just wanted to play a club.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, and then next week we're playing giant stadium. You know what I mean? There's like there's such a mixture of things going on there, and even to this day, the guys still love to get in and do small clubs and you know, even theaters and stuff like that.
I was gonna say, I remember when I was living in Orange County, California, and there was this little bar that I used to like go around sound at. It was called the Tiki Bar, and as I understood it, I don't know if it was while you were with them or before, but I know Kevin Lemoyne was there, but they had gone and played that, and that place is like, you know, doesn't even hold 100 people, right? I mean, it's this little place. So you guys still do some of that stuff, even though they're on these big stadium gigs?
Oh yeah.
That's
they love
crazy.
that sort of stuff. You know, they love to get that, you know, kind of that humble feeling of being right there, the intimate, you know, being right in front of the kids and the fans and everybody. I mean, Billy loves that stuff, and the rest of the band does too. I mean, not just him, but
that's awesome.
That feeling of, you know, just kind of where you started from, right? And getting that intimate right up front, that sweaty smell that, you know, sweating your ass off, just
Yeah,
feeling of being right there. They love it.
that's
And
cool.
yeah, we still do a few things like that here and there. Not as many, obviously, but
Yeah.
they still love to go do that when they can.
What's the dynamic like being that you work for a production company, right? So I think I want to understand, you know, you have a duty to the band as their monitor engineer, but yet you're also working for this production company. How does that work? And like, how do they intermingle? You know, being that you work for the production company, the band has resources now, right? Like immediate resources. They don't have to call somebody who they don't know. What is that like managing the two duties? You know, when you're on the road, you get a call from somebody saying they need a PA or lighting system or stage or whatever. But yeah, you're sitting here and you're like, hey man, I got to do sound check, you know, with one of the biggest bands in the world right now. Like how is that? How do you manage your time doing those two roles, if you will?
It's tough, to be honest with you. Because like between, as you know, being on the road, I mean, it's just traveling alone is tough on you.
Yep.
It's my days off are not necessarily days off anymore. I mean, to be quite
Yeah.
honest with you, I'm answering emails, I'm taking phone calls, I'm trying to get out. If I wasn't able to take somebody's phone call during a sound check or a show or something like that, then that's when I'm catching up and I'm going back in. As far as Green Day goes, our mutual buddy Jason Vrobel
Yeah.
is the actual account rep for the tour itself for our company. And, he started with me back in '04 as well. So he's got a long history with the guys too. But, he's the account rep. So fortunately with the band itself, I'm not doing any account stuff as far as Green Day goes. Now, when I
Yeah.
go out and do Tool, that's a different story because they are one of my accounts and I actually do, I have been mixing them in the past. So, it's good and it's bad. It's bad because you're double duty, right?
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
good because you're actually there face to face. So like you said, if somebody needs something, somebody's, whatever, they don't necessarily have to get on the phone anymore. They come walk up and talk to me
Yeah.
about it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I can take care of it from there. Um, you know, it's, it's burning the candle at both ends if you're not careful,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm not actively going out and searching for other bands to go on tour with. I enjoy working for Green Day. I enjoy working for Tool. Um, so, I just I do the sales and accounts thing. And then when one of those guys are on tour, then I usually try to go out and do that. And that's it. But in regards to actually being on the road and managing both of them, it's a process and
Yeah.
it can be kind of grueling at times, but it's, it's my choice and nobody's forcing me to do it. So I'm fortunate enough to be able to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. That seems like a good position to be in, you know, heavily in the industry. What advice would you give? And I have another question after this, but that's more fun. But what advice would you give to somebody trying to get into this business? And also with that, like, what would you tell them to watch out for? I mean, I have my list of things that I tell people trying to get into this industry, whether it's I want to go to college and then I want to do sound, or I want to do sound and I don't want to go to college. As far as a career path, what would you tell somebody that said, hey, I want to do what you do, man? Like, I want to get into this crazy music thing.
That's a tough one, man. There's so many different avenues these days,
Yeah.
I mean, back when I first started, I honestly didn't know a whole lot. I mean, I grew up kind of a small town, right? So it wasn't like we had a whole bunch of clubs and things like that we could go sit in and kind of put our hands in and maybe jump in and, start miking stages and hopefully maybe mix one of the opening bands or something like that. I didn't necessarily have those sort of options. So the fact that of being able to do the research and kind of come across Full Sail really helped me out. And Full Sail is one of those schools, as you know, that some people talk shit about, some people love. And, fortunately for me, it really, to be honest, it really did, open a lot of doors for me. So
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate in that matter. As far as, I mean, the first thing I'm going to tell anybody, that asks me what advice I'm going to give them, say, you say yes.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, anything somebody asks you to do, say yes. If you want to go mix audio, go stick your head in a club. Go figure out who the audio director is at the club or the person that's in charge of it. Start chatting them up. Start talking to them. You know, yeah,
Yeah.
you may have to give them for. You may have to do it for free for a little bit. Who knows? But if that's
Yeah.
what you want to do, then you got to, you know, you kind of got to be willing to sacrifice. You know, go start there. If you want to go the school route, then there's so many different avenues of production these days. You know, and yes, Full Sail used to be one of the only ones that people looked at, and we still heavily look at Full Sail too.
Yeah.
But there's so many other schools that have live production these days and different avenues that way. So, you know, depending on where you are regionally, I mean, there's places out west, there's places in, you know, the Midwest, Nashville, Tennessee, there's Full Sail down in Florida, you know, and there's a lot of different places to look at. So, you know, if you don't know anything about audio and you want to go in audio, you know, start reading live sound books, start reading, you know, that sort of thing.
The
But
Holy
first and
Bible,
foremost,
the Yamaha Sound Reinforcement Handbook, right?
yes, 100%. I think we've all got copies of that, right?
Oh yeah.
But you know, first and foremost is it's, you know, no matter which it is, you got to go in and work your ass off. I mean, it's, as you know, Steve, it's, you know, 18-hour days, it's pulling feeder, it's whatever, you know, you can't be too good for any of it.
Yep.
And, you know, this day and age, you know, the whole work ethic is, I would rather have somebody that knows nothing and works their ass off than somebody that thinks they know everything and is too good to do anything.
Yeah, I always talk to people who, you know, the first thing they want to tell me is what consoles or what boards they've been on, and I said, dude, I don't care about that. Tell me what you know about power. What do you know about that?
Yes,
You know, that's
exactly.
pretty much, yeah.
100%.
Have you ever run a chain motor before? You know, do you even know what a chain motor is? You know, those are the kind of questions that I typically ask.
Yeah. How do you hook up feeder?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What is feeder?
You know, because that's going to be the first thing you're going to do, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the show doesn't happen unless you know how to hook up feeder. So
yeah. And are you good with some Windex cleaning mud off of feeder? Let's start there.
Right. Yep. You know,
so
it's all part of it.
So you said you played in a band. I'm really curious because this piece of you, I didn't know. What instrument do you play, or do you sing? Are you a singer?
I'm definitely not a singer.
Got it.
No, I attempted. I will say attempted because I haven't played in 20 years to play bass guitar.
Oh, nice.
To be honest, and it you know, like I said, it was kind of one of those deals. Like, group of buddies, we were in high school and we loved music. We were always, you know, watching music videos and shit like that, and always talking about it. And one day we're like, man, we should just try to do it, you know. And you know, one of my buddies played guitar, another buddy of mine, you know, he was into doing drums and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, all right, well, I guess I'll fill the hole. You know, so kind of started playing bass and doing that, and I never was any good, but you know, it was fun while it lasted. And I you know, I took a few lessons and things like that, tried to better myself as far as that goes. But then once like I said, once I got into, you know, doing live stuff or doing recording stuff, that was kind of all over at that point.
Yeah. How do you see the industry changing? I see it changing as the budgets, until you're successful, right? The budgets are shrinking, and I see a lot more smaller bands doing vans, taking really small packages out with them, in-ear racks. You know, the technology is allowing people to eliminate a monitor position, right? All the band members are mixing from an iPad. And I think it's both, it may kind of suck from a production company standpoint, but at the same time, it's enabling creating more opportunity for these smaller bands to go out. Because let's face it, you know, you don't have the opportunity. You talked about opportunity with your band, right? Like, you don't have the opportunity to go to a bar and be found, if you will, anymore. You know, that has been dead for a long time. So what are your thoughts on that? We're a small band in a van, and, you know, we're going to go pound some clubs with all this like smaller technology. How do you see the industry changing at that lower level?
At the lower level, I mean, it's exactly what you're saying. I mean, dude, run lean and mean. you know,
Yep.
because the leaner you run, obviously there's so many, extra expenses when you're doing that. I mean, gas isn't what it used to be 20 years ago. And,
Yeah.
your hotels, if you're able to get one or whatever, food in general, and the clubs are still only wanting to pay you $100 a night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like that money probably hasn't changed in 20 years, but yet everything else around you has. So
Yep.
you start looking at the different sides of it, running lean and mean and that sort of thing is the best way possible. I mean, if you want to get out and cover ground, you're going to have to.
Yeah.
The technology, like you said, being able to run, get a small little in-ear setup and whatever for minimal cost and run it from an iPad, that's huge these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's big because you can gain consistent shows without having to worry about your local guy every day trying to blow your ears out.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing as well. So like you said, the technology is great. It doesn't take up near the space it used to, and you're not having to have a 10-foot box trailer behind a van and whatever.
Yeah.
You can everything, you can scale everything down a lot more these days than you used to be able to. And like I said, you can go in, and it also opens up opportunities for you to play different places too. If you've got a small little package like that, I mean, hell, you could go sit up in front of the local grocery store and play. I mean, you just need a little bit of power, and there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that sort of thing. So I think, opportunity to play, I think there's probably more opportunities now than there used to be to play. It just depends on how much you want it, how much you want to go get it.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing, the smaller stuff, you just got to run lean and mean. I mean,
Speaking of gear, what console, what kind of gear are you using currently in the Green Day camp? We didn't talk about that yet. I wanted to cover that.
For my monitor world, the console itself is an Avid SXL 32.
Yeah.
And so using that, and to be honest, I hadn't used one until I came back to these guys in 21.
Yeah.
And I actually really dig it. My console of choice previously was like a Digico SD7 or something like that, which is what I use on tools still to this day.
Yeah.
But, it's the same thing. It's every band, you kind of need a set of tools for what works for each band. And, the Avid works for these guys. I like it. It sounds great. It's the adult version of a profile, really, if you will.
Yeah.
Obviously sounds a lot better, but anyways, in-ear wise, we're on Ultimate Ears, the Ultimate Ear Lives. We're transmitting wise, we're Shure PSM 1000s. A lot of people are going to WYSICOM stuff. So that's, maybe look into that next go around. We'll see.
Do you think that's because of supply, or do you think there's a clear advantage, like some technical advantage? Because I know supply has been plaguing Shure right now, right? With the chip shortage and things of that nature. So do you think that transition is more of a technical in audio reasoning, or is it purely because like, hey, these guys can get product to us?
No, it's plagued everybody. I mean, any manufacturer, to be honest, whether it's WYSICOM or Shure or anybody else. Depending on who you talk to, you're going to get a different answer, right? So WYSICOM stuff has its advantages. I think the RF side of things, just the RF in general, I think is a little bit better, and they've got a slight advantage over a lot of other companies when it comes to that. The sound quality itself, the overall quality of them, I have listened to it, but I haven't mixed with it, so I'm not going to be able to give an honest opinion on that sort of thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people say it's better. Again, depending on who you talk to.
Subjective,
Right.
Yep.
It's kind of the argument between regular packs and plus packs on PSM 1000s, right?
Yep.
Depending on who you talk to, depending on which one you like better. So, but what it really comes down to be honest with you, is, just like consoles and anything else, to be honest, you're kind of splitting hairs anymore. All the technology is so much better than it used to be. All these brands are producing amazing products, and it just depends on the right tool for the job. And to be honest, for me, it's going to be more about stability with RF than it is going to be, you know, what I think a pack sounds versus another pack.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to make sure my artist is able to hear themselves no matter where they go on stage. And RF is such a, such a
Dark
shitty
art
thing these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with everybody, I mean, the spectrum itself is just, we're losing, places to even go anymore.
Yeah.
And RF is just getting heavier and heavier. So anyways, it just, to me, it's going to be about, I want to make sure that my artist is able to hear themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm going to search RF stability and what works best. And then we're going to look at sound quality.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So, and yes, the art of being an RF guy these days is truly an art.
Yeah.
And, I'm very fortunate to have some really good RF people on Green Day with me, because I don't necessarily know the RF game very well.
It is one of those subjects. It's a tough subject. Even when I was in school, I took communications class where they talk about, intermodulation and all these different topologies on how to transmit RF, and it just made my head spin. And I probably shouldn't say that as an electrical engineer, but man, it did. It's a different animal, the RF game. So
it's one of those things you can't see it, right? So it's like, you literally, you got to rely on computer screens, and the end game obviously is what you hear. But to even get in the ballpark anymore, you're all the RF spectrum, all the stuff, all the Shure gear, all the stuff you need to make sure that it's nuts. It's mind numbing to me. But
and everything keeps changing too, right? Like you're constantly a new piece of software, or new frequency band, or my scanner is no longer in the band that this transmitter works at, and like you have to make sure that you're keeping up on the tech.
Totally, absolutely. So,
but listen,
as far as gear goes, I don't have any other like special. There's no little secret weapons in there or anything like that. I usually try to keep things pretty simple.
No custom outboard gear for Billy's vocal or anything of that nature?
No. We've got some switchers for microphones. That's about as fancy as it gets.
You'll leave that to Mr. Lemoyne out front of house, taking a recording desk out with it.
He's got a museum out there with him.
I guess I've heard great things. I've heard, sonically it was just killer. Like,
absolutely, 100%. I mean, not to mention he's a fantastic mixer anyway. But you combine that with the kind of the best in the business. It's like, very cool. It's really good.
Very cool. Well, hey, Beau, I really appreciate your time, man. That's all I had, and I didn't want to take up your entire Monday morning. I know you probably got a lot of things to do, so I really appreciate it, dude.
Absolutely, man. I greatly appreciate the invitation, and let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, man. Yeah, definitely.